Okay, so this is practice test number 2, and I am going to work on number 1 first. So it looks like this. Okay, so it says compare the quantity in column A with quantity in column B. We have two functions. We've got f of x, and we also have g of x. And basically we're looking at column A and column B. In column A, we have g of 1, which means we're going to plug in 1 to all the x's in g of x. Same thing with column B. We see f of negative 1. We're going to plug in negative 1 into all the x's in f of x. Okay, so starting with g of 1, we are going to plug in 1 to all the x's in g of x. So it looks like this. Okay, remember this part only means that, hey, Miss M, I'm plugging in 1 into the function g of x. Okay, this does not mean solve for g. Again, we're only plugging in 1 to all the x's in g of x. Okay, that's what we just did. Okay, so now we just solve on the right side. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. And then we have a minus 1. And then you have negative 5 minus 1 is negative 6. So the answer to this part over here, g of 1, actually I'm going to go like this. The answer to g of 1 is negative 6. That's the answer that we got. Okay, next we are going to plug in negative 1 into f of x. So I'm going to do that on this side. We've got f of negative 1 is equal to 3 times negative 1 squared plus 1. And then if I do my exponents first, negative 1 squared is positive 1. And then multiplication goes next. 3 times 1 is 3. And then lastly, 3 plus 1 is equal to 4. So if I go back over here, f of negative 1 was positive 4. So this is going to be a positive 4. So if we look at these statements, which quantity is greater, the quantity in column A or quantity in column B? If you just chose B, you're correct, which is 4, because that's greater than negative 6. So the answer is the quantity in column B is greater. Okay, now I'm going to work on number 2 from practice test number 2. Before I cover this problem, I want you to take a look at the equation there. This is a rational equation. It's not linear, it's not quadratic, it's not cubic, it's not exponential, it's not a log. It's irrational because you can see that the x is at the denominator, and that's what makes this a rational function. A few things you have to remember about the rational function is that it has two asymptotes, and the asymptotes are given to you by h and k, and h is always this number at the bottom next to x. K is always the number that's all by itself, just like before. Remember, you have to think opposite when you're looking at h. So in this case, since it says x minus 3, h is really positive 3. Okay, because you have to think opposite. And then k is equal to negative 2. After you find h and k, you now know where the two asymptotes are. So when h is equal to 3, that means the vertical asymptote has shifted 3 units to the right. So this is one of your asymptotes. Okay, and since that's crossing the x-axis, that is the line x equals 3. Then we're going to do k equals -2. That means the horizontal line has moved 2 units down, so now that is going to be right here. And you notice it crosses, it intersects the y-axis, so that's going to be y equals -2. After you draw your two asymptotes from the intersection of the asymptote, which is right here in the middle, from that intersection you're going to go up 1 over 1 and make a dot. And you're also going to go from the intersection down 1 over 1 and make another dot. Obviously mine are not drawn to scale. And then here you draw your two boomerangs, and the only thing I'm going to be looking for is if your boomerangs touch the asymptotes. Remember, an asymptote is something gets really close to but doesn't touch. And obviously you guys are going to do much better drawing these because I'm using my finger right now. You guys are going to use pencils. And that's what the graph looks like. Okay, after you draw your asymptotes and your boomerangs, the attributes that I'm going to be looking for, okay, it says attributes right here. The attributes that I'm going to be looking for are domain, range, and asymptotes, which you've already labeled. So the asymptotes are x equals 3 and y equals -2. Let's do domain. Domain are all the x values. So as you can see, your boomerang goes all the way to the left. So that means your domain starts at -infinity. And then, as it goes to the right, the closest it goes to the right is trying to get close to +3, but it only gets really, really close to it because there's an asymptote there. So that means your domain goes to 3, not included. That's why we put parentheses there. And then all of a sudden, it jumps on the other side of the asymptote, close to 3, and then goes to +infinity. Okay, so now the other part of the domain is 3 to +infinity. For range, you go from lowest to highest, and the boomerang goes really, really low. So you just see there's an arrow there. It's going to keep going down. So that means your range starts at -infinity. And then it goes as high as -2, and it stops because there's an asymptote there. So that means we go all the way to -2. And then all of a sudden it jumps from -2 on the other side and goes all the way to +infinity. So it starts again at -2 and then goes to +infinity. Okay, so we're doing number 3, and it says 3a says to find tk minus sk. Notice that tk is the second one and sk is the first one. Okay, so you have to make sure you pay attention to what order the question is asking you to find out. So if we do tk minus sk, we've got -k squared plus 4 minus sk 3k squared plus 1. Okay, notice that I put the second equation in parentheses when I have that minus. Okay, so that's really important. Some of you guys are going to forget, so make sure you're not the kid that forgets. Because remember, when you have a minus, you have to distribute that negative to everything inside the second fraction to switch all the signs. So we're going to have negative k squared plus 4 minus 3k squared minus 1. And then we're going to combine our like terms. You have negative k squared minus 3k squared. That's going to be negative 4k squared. And then you have 4, positive 4 minus 1 is going to give you a positive 3. So this is the combined function tk minus sk. Okay, so now you're supposed to use your graphing calculator to graph negative 4k squared plus 3, because that's the answer that we got. So if I show you this video of me doing it on my calculator, let's see. Here you go. To graph that equation, you're going to have to use your graphing calculator. So you're going to do y equals, and I believe it was negative 4x squared plus 3. And then to get the points, you need to go to your second table, and you're going to pick the points that are going to fit on that coordinate plane. Okay, so you're probably going to go from negative 1 to positive 1. That's probably going to be the only one that fits. And if you want to confirm what the graph looks like, which you know should be an upside down quadratic or upside down parabola, you can check just in case. Okay, so you're going to use these points to graph that parabola. Alright, so let's graph it then. I'm going to zoom in here so I don't make a mistake. It was negative 1, negative 1. So like right about here. And then 0, 3, 1, negative 1. And those are the only ones that really fit on this graph. So from here you're going to draw your parabola, and you're done.